The morning sun cast long shadows across the research station on planet Kepler 442b as Captain Jake Morrison walked through the main corridor. The place buzzed with activity as humans and aliens worked side by side on various projects. The Zephyrians looked like walking crystals with their see-through skin and multiple eyes that could see things humans could never imagine. They had been good partners for almost 2 years now. Jake stopped at the main control room where Commander Vexthal stood watching his screens. The alien's 4 arms moved across different control panels while his 6 eyes tracked multiple data streams at once. His voice came through the translation device attached to his chest. "Good morning, Captain Morrison," Vexthal said without looking away from his work. "The morning scans show all clear in sectors 7 through 12. Jake nodded and poured himself coffee from the machine the humans had installed. The Zephyrians didn't understand why humans needed hot liquid to function, but they had learned to accept it. Dr. Lisa Cooper sat at her workstation nearby, studying plant samples through a microscope, while her colleague Sam Johnson typed notes on his computer. "Any word from the outer posts?" Jake asked. "Station Alpha reported normal conditions at dawn," Vexthal replied. "Their quantum scanners detected no unusual activity in the past 12 hours. Jake had learned to trust the alien technology over the months. The Zephyrians could scan entire continents in minutes and spot a single living creature from space. Their quantum resonance detectors could find hidden objects through solid rock. Their biosignature analyzers could identify any known life form by its chemical makeup. It was technology far beyond anything humans had ever built. The alarm started blaring at exactly 10:30 in the morning. "Station Alpha is under attack," came the panicked voice through the radio. "We need immediate assistance." They came out of nowhere. Vexthal's crystalline fingers flew across his controls. Multiple screens lit up showing scanner readings from the attack station. "Impossible," he muttered. "All scanners show clear. There are no hostile signatures within 50 kilometers of Station Alpha." The radio crackled again. "3 buildings are burning. We have casualties. The attackers just vanished, but we can hear them moving around us." Jake grabbed the radio. "Station Alpha, this is Morrison. Can you see the attackers?" "Negative, Captain. They're completely invisible. Our thermal imaging shows nothing. Motion detectors are useless." Vexthal activated the emergency protocols. Scanning arrays across the planet turned toward Station Alpha. Quantum field generators powered up to maximum. Molecular analysis stations began deep scans of the area. The displays showed detailed maps of every rock, tree, and building at the station, but no signs of any attackers. "This cannot be correct," Vexthal said, his voice carrying frustration. "No known technology can hide from our scanners. We can detect individual atoms." Dr. Cooper looked up from her microscope. "What if it's not technology we know about?" "Impossible," another Zephyrian scientist said from across the room. "Our database contains scanning profiles for every known species in this sector. Nothing can achieve complete invisibility." The attacks continued for 3 hours. Station Alpha reported multiple casualties and significant damage, but the Zephyrian scanners never detected a single attacker. Jake watched the alien technology fail again and again while good people died at the remote station. By afternoon, a rescue team had reached Station Alpha. The damage was worse than anyone expected. Buildings had been cut apart with precision weapons. Equipment had been destroyed in patterns that showed intelligence and planning. Yet there was no trace of who had done it. "We found something," called Tony Martinez over the radio. The former Army Ranger was part of the rescue team. "Footprints in the mud near the power station, not human or Zephyrian." Vexthal immediately dispatched analysis drones to scan the footprints. Within minutes, detailed 3D models appeared on the main screen. The prints showed 3-toed feet with claw marks. They were roughly humanoid but larger than human feet. "Unknown species," the computer announced. "No match in current database." Over the following days, more attacks hit remote stations across the planet. Each time the pattern was the same. Invisible attackers struck without warning, caused massive damage, then disappeared completely. The Zephyrian scanners never detected anything during the attacks. Though they could analyze the damage afterward, Jake requested permission to investigate using human methods, but Vexil dismissed the idea. Captain Morrison, our technology can scan quantum fields and detect molecular signatures. What could primitive human techniques possibly accomplish that our advanced systems cannot? The Zephyrian commander began deploying even more sophisticated equipment. Gravitational wave detectors were installed at key locations. Space-time distortion monitors were placed in orbital satellites. Energy pattern analyzers capable of detecting the smallest power fluctuations were scattered across the planet's surface. Dr. Cooper and Sam Johnson continued their biological research, but found their work increasingly interrupted by security concerns. The Zephyrian suggested that perhaps the human scientists should evacuate while the aliens handled what they called a technological problem requiring technological solutions. Jake felt frustration building as he watched his alien partners struggle with an enemy they couldn't detect. His military experience told him that when technology failed, it was time to go back to basics. But the Zephyrians had such faith in their machines that they couldn't consider other approaches. The breaking point came on the seventh day of attacks. The invisible enemy struck the main communications relay, cutting off contact with several outer stations. The attack happened in broad daylight with dozens of Zephyrian sensors focused on the area, yet the scanners showed nothing until the relay tower started falling. "This is impossible," Vexil said, staring at his displays. "No technology should be able to achieve this level of stealth." Jake made his decision. "Commander, I request permission to try a different approach." "What approach could humans possibly have that we do not?" "Sometimes the old ways work when the new ways fail." Vexil considered this for a long moment. His multiple eyes focused on Jake with an expression that might have been pity. "Very well, Captain Morrison. You may try your primitive methods, but do not interfere with our technological solutions." Jake nodded and began planning. He would need people who understood tracking and hunting rather than scanners and computers. As he contacted Tony Martinez and the other humans with military or outdoor experience, he wondered if human instincts could succeed where alien technology had failed. The invisible enemy was out there somewhere, and Jake intended to find them. Jake Morrison stood in the briefing room with 3 other humans while Commander Vexil watched from across the table. The Zephyrian's multiple eyes showed clear skepticism as Jake explained his plan to use traditional tracking methods instead of high-tech scanners. Tony Martinez leaned back in his chair, his weathered face showing interest. The former Army Ranger had spent years tracking enemies through mountains and forests back on Earth. "So we're going hunting without computers," he said with a slight smile. Dr. Ellen Wright adjusted her field glasses and opened her notebook. The wildlife biologist had been studying the planet's ecosystem for 18 months and knew more about local animals than anyone else at the station. "The question is what signs we should look for," she said. Bobby Chun nodded agreement. The survival expert had grown up in rural mountains where his grandfather taught him to track deer and wild boar using nothing but observation and patience. "Every creature leaves traces," he said, "even invisible ones." Vexil's translation device crackled as he spoke. "Captain Morrison, our molecular scanners can detect individual chemical compounds. Our quantum analyzers can spot disturbances in space-time itself. What can human eyes possibly see that our instruments cannot?" Jake spread out maps of the attack locations on the table. "Sometimes the answer isn't about seeing more. Sometimes it's about seeing differently." The team spent the rest of the day studying attack sites. While Zephyrian technicians installed new scanning equipment with names Jake couldn't pronounce, the humans walked through damaged areas looking for clues the machines had missed. Dr. Wright noticed it first at Station Alpha. "Look at this," she called, kneeling beside a patch of disturbed ground. The others gathered around as she pointed to tiny trails in the dirt. "These are on-paths." Bobby Chun crouched down to examine the trails more closely. "What kind of ants?" The locals call them trackers, Ellen explained. They're about twice the size of Earth carpenter ants, but much more organized. Their colonies can span kilometers, and they use chemical signals to communicate across vast distances. Tony Martinez studied the ant trails with professional interest. What's unusual about these particular paths? Ellen pointed to several places where the trails made sharp turns or detours around empty spaces. Normal ant behavior is very predictable. They take the most efficient route between food sources and their nests. But here they're avoiding certain areas for no apparent reason. The team spent hours mapping in trails around all the attack sites. The pattern became clear after examining the third location. In every case, ant colonies had changed their established routes in the days before the attacks, avoiding areas that appeared completely normal to human eyes and Zephyrian scanners. It's like they're walking around invisible obstacles, Bobby observed. Ellen pulled out her biology textbooks and field guides. Many Earth animals can detect chemical signatures that humans cannot smell. Dogs can track scents days old. Cats can sense earthquakes before they happen. Maybe these local ants have similar abilities. Jake felt excitement building as the pieces came together. You're saying the ants can detect the invisible attackers? It's possible, Ellen said. If the attackers emit any kind of chemical signature, pheromones or even electromagnetic fields, the ants might be sensitive enough to notice. Tony Martinez was already thinking tactically. If we can map where the ants won't go, we can map where the invisible enemies are moving. They brought their theory to Commander Vexthal that evening. The Zephyrian listened with growing disbelief. As Ellen explained how local insects might accomplish what advanced alien technology could not. Dr. Wright, Vexthal said slowly, our chemical analyzers can identify molecular structures that no biological creature could possibly detect. You suggest that primitive insects have superior sensing capabilities to our instruments. Not superior, Ellen replied. Different. Evolution designs biological sensors for specific survival needs. Maybe these ants evolved to detect something that your machines weren't programmed to recognize. Another Zephyrian scientist joined the conversation. Commander, perhaps we should increase scanner sensitivity, add more quantum resonance frequencies, install gravitational wave detectors. Vexthal nodded approvingly. Excellent suggestion. Technology will solve this technological problem. Jake tried once more. Commander, what if we're wrong about this being a technology problem? What if the solution requires understanding biology instead of physics? Captain Morrison, we appreciate human enthusiasm, but facts are facts. Our civilization has used advanced scanning technology for thousands of years. Insect behavior cannot provide military intelligence. The Zephyrians began installing their new equipment the next morning. Massive quantum resonance arrays rose from the ground at key locations. Orbital satellites deployed molecular analysis beams that could supposedly detect single atoms from space. Gravitational sensors capable of spotting disturbances the size of dust particles were scattered across hundreds of square kilometers. Meanwhile, the human team continued their ant studies. Ellen collected specimens and observed their behavior patterns under different conditions. Bobby Chun mapped colony locations and identified major travel routes. Tony Martinez studied the tactical implications of using biological indicators for military purposes. The work was slow and required patience that the Zephyrians clearly lacked. Ellen spent hours sitting motionless, watching on colonies go about their daily activities. Bobby Chun followed trails through dense forest, marking GPS coordinates of every major ant highway. Tony Martinez interviewed human settlers who had lived on the planet longest, asking about any unusual animal behavior they had noticed. On the fourth day of research, Ellen made a breakthrough. She had been studying ant chemical communication when she noticed something extraordinary. The ants use different pheromone signals depending on what kind of threat they detect. She announced excitedly. Jake leaned over her shoulder to look at her notes. What do you mean? I've been exposing test colonies to different stimuli. When I introduce Zephyrian scent markers, they use one type of warning pheromone. When I introduce human scent, they use another. But at the attack sites, they're using a third type of signal that I hadn't seen before, Bobby Chun understood immediately. They're warning each other about something they recognize as dangerous but different from anything they know. Tony Martinez felt his soldier instincts engaging. How long before an attack do these warning signals start? Ellen checked her timeline notes. Based on the ant trail changes, I estimate 12 to 18 hours advance warning. The implications hit Jake like lightning. If Ellen was right, the ants could provide early warning of invisible enemy movements with more accuracy than any Zephyrian scanner. The insects were essentially a planet-wide detection network that had evolved over millions of years to sense threats in their environment. We need to test this theory, Jake said. Commander Vexthal was less enthusiastic when they requested permission. For a field test. Captain Morrison, we are installing the most advanced detection equipment in Zephyrian history. Quantum computers are analyzing data from sensors that can spot individual electrons. You wish to use insects? Just let us try, Jake pleaded. If we're wrong, your equipment will handle the next attack. If we're right, we might save lives. Vexthal considered for a long moment. His multiple eyes focused on each human in turn, as if trying to understand their strange logic. Very well. You may conduct your primitive experiment, but do not interfere with our scientific approach. Jake smiled as he shook the alien commander's crystal in hand. Understood. We'll stay out of your way. As the meeting ended, Ellen was already planning collection procedures for ant specimens. Bobby Chun was identifying optimal observation points around likely targets. Tony Martinez was working out communication protocols for coordinating with human and Zephyrian forces during an attack. The next morning brought news that would test their theory sooner than expected. Zephyrian intelligence indicated that the invisible enemy was preparing for their largest attack yet, targeting the main power facility that supplied energy to half the research stations on the planet. It was time to see if human intuition and insect behavior could succeed where alien technology had failed. The power facility stretched across 5 acres of cleared ground, its massive fusion reactors humming with enough energy to supply dozens of research stations. Dr. Ellen Wright knelt beside the eastern perimeter fence, watching ant colonies through her magnifying glass while Tony Martinez scanned the tree line with binoculars. Normal patterns so far, Ellen reported into her radio. The tracker colonies are following their established routes between the forest and the waste heat vents. Jake Morrison's voice crackled back through the communication device. Copy that. Zephyrian scanners show all clear across the entire sector. Bobby Chun checked his watch from his position near the southern approach. 24 hours had passed since Ellen first detected unusual ant pheromone signals near the facility, and they were betting everything on her theory that the insects could sense invisible attackers before any technology could detect them. Commander Vexthal stood in the main control room, surrounded by displays showing readouts from the most advanced scanning equipment the Zephyrian military had ever deployed. Quantum resonance arrays swept the area every 30 seconds. Molecular analyzers searched for any foreign chemical signatures. Gravitational wave detectors monitored space-time for the smallest disturbances. All sensors report negative contact, announced a Zephyrian technician. No hostile signatures detected within scanning range, Vexthal nodded approvingly. Excellent. Our new equipment is functioning perfectly. When the invisible enemy appears, we will detect them immediately. 3 kilometers away, Ellen noticed the first change in ant behavior. A major colony near the facility's eastern fence had suddenly stopped following its normal trail toward the power plant's waste heat vents. Instead, the worker ants were streaming away from the area, leaving behind pheromone markers that Ellen had learned to recognize as danger signals. Jake, I'm seeing pattern changes on the eastern perimeter, she whispered into her radio. The ants are avoiding something that isn't there. Tony Martinez focused his binoculars on the area Ellen indicated. He saw nothing but empty grass and scattered trees, but his military training had taught him to trust intelligence from any source. I'll keep watching the area. Bobby Chun reported similar observations from the south. Major ant highway that. Normally runs past the main entrance is being abandoned. The insects are taking a route that adds almost a kilometer to their journey. Jake felt tension building as he coordinated between the human observers and the Zephyrian command center. His people were reporting invisible threats based on insect behavior, while the aliens saw nothing on their advanced scanners. If Ellen was wrong, they would look foolish. If she was right, they might be the only early warning system that could save the facility. "Commander Vexthal," Jake called through the communication system. "We're detecting possible hostile approach from the east and south based on biological indicators." The Zephyrian commander's response showed clear skepticism. "Captain Morrison, our quantum scanners show no signatures in those areas. Are you certain your insects are reliable?" Ellen was tracking the ant movements with growing excitement and fear. The pattern was becoming clearer by the minute. "Jake, it's not just avoidance anymore. The ants are forming a boundary line about 200 meters out from something that's moving toward the facility." "Can you estimate numbers?" Tony asked. Ellen studied the pheromone markers and disrupted trails. "Based on the size of the area, they're avoiding, I'd guess, multiple individuals moving in coordinated formation." Bobby Chun confirmed similar patterns from his position. "South approach shows the same thing. The ants are outlining something big coming this way." Jake made the critical decision. "All human observers maintain current positions. Commander Vexthal, we have multiple invisible contacts approaching from east and south." "Impossible," came the reply from the control room. "Our sensors detect nothing. Your biological indicators must be responding to some other stimulus." The attack began exactly as the ant behavior had predicted. The first explosion came from the eastern perimeter where Ellen had been tracking disrupted ant trails. A guard tower simply disintegrated, cut apart by invisible weapons that left no energy signature for the Zephyrian scanners to detect. "Contact east," Tony Martinez shouted into his radio while diving for cover. "I can't see them, but something just destroyed Tower 7. The southern attack followed seconds later." Bobby Chun watched in amazement as sections of the perimeter fence fell apart from impacts by completely invisible forces. The ants had been right about the approach direction and timing. "Multiple hostiles south entrance," Bobby reported. Still no visual contact, but the damage patterns show coordinated assault. Commander Vexthal stared at his displays in disbelief. His most advanced scanners showed empty space where explosions were clearly occurring. "This cannot be happening. Our equipment detects no enemy presence." Ellen continued tracking ant movements even as weapons fire erupted around her position. "Jake, the ant patterns show approximately 6 individuals moving northeast from my location toward the main reactor." "Building? Can you give me exact positions?" Tony asked while setting up his rifle. Ellen studied the insect behavior with scientific precision despite the chaos around her. "The ants are avoiding a path that leads directly to the primary cooling intake. Whatever's there is moving at normal human walking speed." Tony Martinez had never fired at completely invisible targets before, but his military training adapted quickly to the unusual situation. Instead of looking for enemies, he watched for the spaces where ants refused to travel. When Ellen called out coordinates, he aimed at empty air and fired area effect rounds designed to disable rather than kill. The strategy worked better than anyone expected. His first burst of gunfire was followed by the sound of something large hitting the ground. A patch of grass flattened as if pressed down by an invisible body. "Target down eastern approach," Tony reported with amazement. "I can't see what I hit, but something definitely fell." Bobby Chun adopted the same tactics at the southern entrance. Using Ellen's biological intelligence and his own wilderness tracking skills, he fired concentrated bursts at areas where ant colonies showed the strongest avoidance reactions. His third attempt resulted in a shimmer in the air and the distinct sound of wounded alien voices. "Multiple hits south entrance," Bobby announced. "Whatever these things are, they can be hurt." The Zephyrian forces, initially confused by reports of invisible enemies, began to understand when their medical scanners detected wounded attackers. Commander Vexthal could suddenly see bleeding alien bodies on his displays, even though his combat sensors still showed nothing. All units converge on coordinates provided by human observers, Vexthal ordered. Target areas of avoidance as indicated by Dr. Wright. The battle shifted as Zephyrian soldiers began following human intelligence instead of relying on their own scanners. Ellen continued providing real-time updates on invisible enemy movements while Tony and Bobby coordinated defensive fire based on insect behavior patterns. Large disturbance moving northwest from the cooling towers, Ellen called out. Ant colonies are streaming away from something heading toward the main control building. Jake relayed the information to Zephyrian ground forces who were finally learning to trust biological indicators over technological sensors. All units, invisible contacts approaching main control from cooling tower direction. The invisible attackers found themselves facing coordinated resistance for the first time. Instead of operating with complete stealth, they were being tracked and targeted by defenders who seemed to predict their every movement. The assault that had been planned as a surprise attack became a costly frontal assault against prepared positions. By the time the shooting stopped, 6 invisible attackers had been killed or captured, and the power facility remained secure. The Zephyrian medical scanners could finally analyze the enemy bodies, revealing a species that used advanced cloaking technology to bend light and electromagnetic radiation around their bodies. Ellen sat exhausted beside the perimeter fence, watching ant colonies slowly return to their normal patterns. The insects had provided more accurate intelligence than the most advanced scanning equipment in the galaxy. Commander Vexthal approached Jake with an expression that might have been respect. Captain Morrison, your biological detection methods were completely successful. Our scanners detected nothing until after your people had already engaged the enemy. Jake smiled as he watched the ants resume their daily activities. Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ways. The implications of the successful defense would change everything about how different species approach security and warfare. But for now, Jake was simply grateful that human intuition and insect behavior had proven more reliable than alien technology. The captured invisible aliens lay in the medical facility, their cloaking technology finally failing as their wounded bodies became visible to everyone in the room. Dr. Ellen Wright studied the creatures with fascination while Commander Vexthal ran detailed scans with his most sophisticated medical equipment. Remarkable, Vexthal said, his multiple eyes focusing on the alien anatomy. Their skin contains microscopic cells that can bend electromagnetic radiation around their bodies. No wonder our scanners could not detect them during combat operations. Jake Morrison examined the prisoners with growing understanding. The creatures looked humanoid but taller, with 3-toed feet that matched the footprints found at the first attack sites. Their technology was built into their biology rather than carried as separate devices. They're called Shadowkin according to our database, reported Sam Johnson from his computer terminal. First contact was recorded 18 months ago, but they disappeared before formal diplomatic relations could be established. Tony Martinez cleaned his rifle while studying the aliens who had nearly killed him. They're professional soldiers, he observed. Look at the way they positioned themselves even while wounded. This wasn't random terrorism. The interrogation revealed disturbing information about Shadowkin capabilities and intentions. Through translation devices, the captured aliens explained that their species have been watching the human Zephyrian research station for over a year, studying both species' military capabilities and technology. Your scanning methods are well known throughout this sector, one wounded Shadowkin told Commander Vexthal. Every species relies on electromagnetic sensors and quantum field detection. We developed our stealth capabilities specifically to avoid such technology. Ellen leaned forward with scientific curiosity. But you didn't expect biological detection methods. The alien's expression showed something that might have been respect. We studied human military history and Zephyrian tactical doctrine. Neither species has used animal behavior for intelligence gathering in recorded conflicts. Your approach was completely unexpected. Jake felt a mixture of pride and concern. Humanity's unconventional thinking had saved the research station. But it also revealed how little the galaxy's species understood about human capabilities. How many more attacks were planned? The power facility was intended as our final target. The Shadowkin replied, "Success would have forced evacuation of all research stations, leaving the planet under our control." Commander Vexthal's crystalline features showed confusion. "Why do you wish to control this planet? Our research poses no threat to your species." The explanation changed everything about the conflict. The Shadowkin revealed that Kepler 442b contained rare mineral deposits that their civilization needed for advanced manufacturing. The joint human-Zephyrian research presence prevented them from establishing mining operations in the planet's richest areas. "We intended to drive away the researchers without causing diplomatic incidents with either the human or Zephyrian governments," the alien continued. "Invisible attacks would have been blamed on unknown forces rather than our species." Tony Martinez understood the tactical implications immediately. Smart plan. Attack without being detected. Let the victims blame each other or unknown enemies while you move in after they evacuate. Ellen was more interested in the biological aspects of their defeat. "Your cloaking technology is impressive, but you emit chemical signatures that local wildlife can detect. We did not consider planetary ecosystems as security factors," the Shadowkin admitted. "Our stealth systems were designed to fool technological sensors, not biological ones." The conversation was interrupted by urgent communications from other research stations across the planet. Word of the successful defense had spread, and reports were coming in of unusual animal behavior at locations where no attacks had yet occurred. Station Charlie reports that local bird populations are avoiding the northern forest, came one message. Station Delta says the native reptiles have abandoned their normal territory near the mineral processing facility. Jake realized they were seeing the full scope of Shadowkin operations for the first time. "Ellen, how quickly can you train other people to recognize these biological warning signs?" Ellen was already making plans. "Give me a week to document the specific behaviors and pheromone markers. Any competent biologist should be able to learn the basics." Commander Vexthal was struggling with the implications of technological failure and biological success. His civilization had built their entire military doctrine around advanced scanning equipment, yet primitive Earth insects had proven more effective than quantum computers. "Captain Morrison," he said slowly, "the Zephyrian High Command must be informed of these developments. Our entire approach to security and warfare may need revision." The next few days brought rapid changes to operations across the planet. Ellen established training programs for both human and Zephyrian personnel, teaching them to observe and interpret animal behavior patterns. Tony Martinez worked with alien military commanders to develop new tactical doctrines that combined biological intelligence with traditional technology. Bobby Chun led expeditions to catalog other species that might serve as biological early warning systems. His reports described bird flocks that reacted to specific chemical signatures, reptiles that avoided areas with unusual electromagnetic fields, and mammal populations that showed stress behaviors in response to foreign pheromones. The Shadowkin prisoners provided additional information that proved invaluable for planetary defense. Their species had been operating on Kepler 442b for months, establishing hidden bases and supply caches throughout the wilderness areas. Traditional scanning had never detected these installations because they were designed to fool electromagnetic sensors. "Our bases emit no energy signatures and use passive camouflage," one prisoner explained. "Your quantum scanners cannot detect structures that produce no electromagnetic emissions." Ellen proposed using biological surveys to locate the hidden installations. "If their presence disturbs local ecosystems, we should be able to map their locations by studying animal behavior patterns across larger areas." The systematic biological survey that followed revolutionized intelligence gathering on the planet. Teams of human and Zephyrian researchers spread across continents, documenting how local wildlife reacted to foreign presence. Within 2 weeks, they had identified 17 previously unknown Shadowkin installations. Commander Vexthal led joint forces to investigate the hidden bases, using Ellen's biological intelligence instead of relying solely on scanners. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. Every location identified through animal behavior contained significant equipment and supplies. This base has been operational for at least 6 months, Vexthil reported from the largest installation. Our orbital scanners passed over this area dozens of times without detecting anything. Jake coordinated the overall operation from the main research station, watching as decades of Shadowkin planning were unraveled through methods his alien partners had initially dismissed as primitive. The combination of human observation skills and Zephyrian military efficiency proved more effective than either approach alone. The success caught the attention of other species throughout the sector. Diplomatic messages arrived from various alien governments requesting information about the new biological detection methods. Some offered technology exchanges while others proposed joint research projects. The Altarian Defense Force wants to send observers to study our techniques, Sam Johnson reported while reviewing the incoming communications. 3 other species have requested formal briefings on biological intelligence gathering. Tony Martinez found himself appointed as military liaison to coordinate training programs for alien forces. 6 months ago, they thought human methods were primitive, he told Jake with amusement. Now they want to learn everything we know about tracking and hunting. The captured Shadowkin watched these developments with growing concern. Their carefully planned invasion had not only failed, but had resulted in the development of new defensive capabilities that threatened their stealth advantages throughout the galaxy. You have created something beyond simple planetary defense, one prisoner told Jake during an interrogation. Other species will adopt these methods and our strategic advantages will be eliminated. Jake considered the implications of spreading human tracking techniques to alien military forces. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Invisible attacks are acts of war regardless of who carries them out. The successful defense of the research station had grown into something much larger than anyone anticipated. Human ingenuity combined with alien technology was creating new possibilities for cooperation and security that neither species could have achieved alone. As reports continued arriving from successful operations across the planet, Jake realized they had proven something important about the value of different approaches to problem solving. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations were learning from human methods they had initially considered obsolete. The war against the invisible invaders was far from over, but for the first time since the attacks began, Jake felt confident about their chances of victory. Zephyrian High Command arrived on Kepler 442b 3 weeks after the successful defense of the power facility, their massive diplomatic vessel casting shadows across the research station as it landed. Jake Morrison watched from the observation deck as Commander Vexthil greeted the delegation with obvious nervousness. Supreme Military Advisor Kethryn wishes to personally observe your biological detection methods, Vexthil explained to Jake as they walked toward the landing area. This represents the first major tactical innovation in Zephyrian military doctrine in over 2 centuries. Ellen Wright had spent the previous days preparing demonstration materials, collecting on specimens and mapping behavior patterns around the station. Her research notes filled dozens of electronic files and several physical notebooks. I never imagined that studying local insects would change interstellar military policy, she told Bobby Chun while organizing her equipment. The Supreme Military Advisor was twice the size of normal Zephyrians, his crystalline structure more complex and his multiple eyes capable of tracking dozens of data streams simultaneously. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to commanding fleets across multiple star systems. Captain Morrison, Kethryn said through his translation device, our preliminary report suggests that human observation methods succeeded where our most advanced technology failed. This requires detailed examination. Jake led the delegation to the same eastern perimeter where Ellen had first noticed disrupted ant trails. The area looked peaceful now, with normal insect activity resumed and no signs of the battle that had taken place weeks earlier. Ellen knelt beside the fence line with her magnifying equipment, While the Zephyrian delegation watched with obvious skepticism, "The key is understanding normal behavior patterns first," she explained. "These ant colonies have established routes that they follow consistently unless something disturbs their environment." Supreme Military Advisor Catherine activated recording devices that captured every detail of Ellen's explanation. "Dr. Wright, our quantum scanners can detect molecular changes at the atomic level. How can insect behavior provide more accurate intelligence than instruments capable of such precision?" "Because the insects evolved here," Ellen replied patiently. "They've developed sensory capabilities specifically adapted to this planet's conditions over millions of years. Your scanners are designed for general use across many different environments." Bobby Chun joined the explanation, drawing on his wilderness experience. "It's like the difference between a general-purpose tool and one designed for a specific job. Both work, but the specialized tool performs better in its intended environment." The demonstration continued as Ellen showed how different stimuli affected ant behavior. When she introduced Zephyrian scent markers, the insects showed one type of avoidance pattern. Human scents caused different reactions. The chemical signatures recovered from Shadowkin equipment produced a third distinct response. "Remarkable," Catherine said, his multiple eyes focusing intently on the insect colonies. "The biological response is immediate and specific. Our scanners require several minutes to complete molecular analysis of unknown substances." Tony Martinez had been quiet during the scientific demonstration, but now he stepped forward to address the military implications. "Supreme Advisor, the real advantage isn't just detection speed. The ants provide continuous monitoring across the entire planet without requiring power sources or maintenance." The Zephyrian delegation spent 3 days observing human methods. In action, they watched Ellen train other researchers to recognize behavioral patterns. They observed Bobby Chun leading expeditions to catalog different indicator species across various terrains. They studied Tony Martinez's integration of biological intelligence with traditional military tactics. Commander Vextel served as translator and cultural interpreter during the lengthy discussions that followed. "The High Command is struggling to understand how such simple methods can be so effective," he explained to Jake during a private conversation. "Our entire civilization is built around technological solutions to complex problems." The breakthrough came when Supreme Military Advisor Catherine observed the captured Shadowkin prisoners during their daily interrogations. The invisible aliens had become increasingly cooperative as they realized the scope of their strategic failure. "Your biological detection methods have neutralized our primary military advantage," one prisoner told Catherine. "We spent decades developing stealth technology to defeat electromagnetic sensors. We never considered that primitive life forms could expose our operations." Catherine's crystalline features showed deep thought. "Captain Morrison, these creatures developed their capabilities specifically to counter our scanning technology. Yet, your methods detected them easily because you use completely different principles." Jake nodded agreement. "Sometimes the best solution isn't the most advanced solution. Sometimes it's the most appropriate solution for the specific problem." The formal presentation to the Zephyrian High Command took place in the main conference facility, with representatives participating through holographic projection from across the galaxy. Ellen stood before an audience of military commanders and scientific advisors who controlled the defense policies of hundreds of worlds. "The fundamental principle is adaptation rather than standardization," Ellen explained. "Instead of using the same detection methods everywhere, we study each environment and identify the biological indicators that evolved in that specific ecosystem." Supreme Military Advisor Catherine added his endorsement to Ellen's presentation. "Dr. Wright's methods have proven more effective than our most sophisticated equipment. The Zephyrian military will be adopting biological intelligence gathering as standard operating procedure." The decision sparked immediate interest from other species throughout the sector. Within days, diplomatic requests arrived from dozens of alien governments seeking information about the new detection methods. Some offered technology exchanges while others proposed joint research partnerships. Jake found himself appointed as Director of Interspecies Tactical Cooperation, a position that didn't exist until the High Command created it specifically for him. His first assignment was establishing training programs for alien military forces who wanted to learn human tracking and observation techniques. 6 months ago, they thought we were primitives, Tony Martinez observed while reviewing applications from various species. Now they're sending their best officers to learn from us. The training center that developed around the research station became a model for cooperation between different approaches to problem solving. Zephyrian technology provided detailed environmental analysis, while human observation skills identified biological indicators. Together, the methods proved far more effective than either approach used alone. Ellen established the Biological Intelligence Institute with funding from multiple alien governments. Her research team studied indicator species on dozens of planets, creating comprehensive databases of how local wildlife responded to foreign presence. Every world has its own biological early warning systems, she reported to the Interspecies Defense Council. We just need to learn how to read them. Bobby Chin led the Field Research Division, training both humans and aliens in wilderness observation techniques. His expeditions discovered that virtually every planet had species capable of detecting threats that technological sensors missed. Evolution is the best engineer, he told his mixed classes of human and alien students. Life forms develop exactly the capabilities they need to survive in their specific environments. The Shadowkin prisoners eventually negotiated a peace treaty that surprised everyone involved. Instead of facing military punishment, they requested permission to study human detection methods for their own defensive purposes. We developed our stealth capabilities to hide from other species' technology, their leader explained during treaty negotiations. But now that biological detection methods are spreading throughout the galaxy, we need to adapt our own defensive strategies. Jake agreed to include Shadowkin representatives in the training programs, recognizing that former enemies often became the most valuable allies when their interests aligned. They understand stealth technology better than anyone, he told the Interspecies Council. Their knowledge combined with our biological methods could create even more effective security systems. The research station evolved into a permanent interspecies cooperation center where different civilizations shared their unique approaches to common problems. Zephyrian quantum scanning technology was integrated with human biological observation methods and Shadowkin stealth expertise to create hybrid detection systems that none of the species could have developed alone. Commander Vexthal, promoted to Director of Technological Integration, oversaw projects that combined the best aspects of multiple species' capabilities. We have learned that advancement comes not from developing more sophisticated versions of existing technology, but from combining different types of knowledge in unexpected ways. The success on Kepler 442b became a model for cooperation throughout the sector. Other multi-species research stations adopted similar approaches, combining technological advancement with biological wisdom and practical experience.